My concentration using the part-by-part meditation method is much better than observing the breath, but I'm quite slow. In 45 minutes, it's very difficult for me to get through the whole body. Should I consciously go faster, or will I get faster with practice? Well, both are possible. If one gets the sensation, one can just drop it and go on. If it takes long or longer to get any sensation, one has to stay on that spot longer, then it wouldn't pay to go faster. But if one gets a sensation, one just keeps going. And one does get much faster with practice. That's quite true. So if after 45 minutes the bell goes quickly out through either the hands or the feet, whichever is the closest. When you were talking about the past being the past and done with, you also made a serious comment in a joking manner. Goes against all of Western psychology. I'm a great believer in a bit of humor. Being a Western psychotherapist who tries to stay present and aware with my clients, attending to whatever arises in the moment, what about the clients who have been badly abused in the past? And what arises for them is a need to talk about those things. Do you think that they can be helpful, or are you seeing no value in Western psychotherapy? In the USA, many of us are finding value in Buddhism along with psychotherapy. Are these opposites? No, they're not opposites. Psychotherapy can be extremely helpful, particularly, of course, to people who find it difficult to have a harmonious and balanced daily life. And many people do find that very difficult, so it can be very helpful. And to talk about their past, yes, it can be like a catharsis, getting it out. And then the thing to do is to forgive and forget. The first one first, to forgive if one has been abused. And to realize that not only that the past is past, but that the person who abused and the person who was abused are no longer in existence. They're long gone. We're changing every second. And obviously this part of Western psychotherapy is a very, here, not only in America, here in Germany, it's a very strong feature of it. And slowly, slowly, some changes are coming. But yes, talking about it, people do want to talk about those things, and that can be very helpful. To give oneself metta, does this not mean to support the illusion of the self? As long as one knows who's getting up in the morning, one also knows who's sitting here meditating. And the one who's sitting here meditating needs love. Without that, the one who's sitting here meditating won't meditate very well. So we'll just get on with giving ourselves love and compassion as long as we still think it's us doing that. One day, when the path has been very thoroughly practiced, metta, loving kindness, is completely impersonal. It's just a quality of the heart. So, in other words, if we were enlightened, the quality of the heart would be there, but It wouldn't be an I or a me that's doing it. Could you please explain how to bow to Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha at the beginning and end of a meditation? How should the hands be placed? Is the sequence forehead, throat, chest, and what do the three positions represent? It's not the throat, it's the mouth. It's the forehead represents the thinking, the mouth is the speaking, and the chest area is the action. So it's with thought, speech, and action. And traditionally it's done in a kneeling position. And what else? It's done in a kneeling position, and it doesn't have to be the hands don't have to be put into those three positions. They're held together and then put down on the ground, and the head on the ground. What is the name of the meditation method we are practicing here? Watching the breath is called anapanasati, which means mindfulness of in-breath, out-breath. And the one where we attend to the feelings and sensations, we usually call sweeping. We can call it, if we like Pali, we can use Vedananupassana, but it's a bit more difficult with foreign language, so we can call it sweeping. The other one's walking meditation. Loving kindness meditation is called Metta Bhavana, if one likes Pali, but if one wants it in English, it's loving kindness meditation. What do you mean by trance? How does it differ from altered states of consciousness and or from absorption states? Why is it not any good? Trance is a state of fog. And states of fog we've got anyway. We don't have to come to meditation course for that. They are a constant. They are a human problem, states of fog. So they're quite pleasant, actually. And some people enjoy that a lot. It doesn't have to necessarily be in a real trance. But you sit there, supposedly watching the breath. The mind has made up some fantasies. It gets a bit tired of the fantasies, isn't ready to fall asleep, but it gets into a foggy state. And that's rather pleasant. It's an altered state of consciousness, all right, but it doesn't help one to recognize anything. It's of course not called an altered state of consciousness, because if we were to call it that, we would really get into difficulties with our conceptual verbalization, because altered states of consciousness are of course something which one is actually hoping to have. So it's not any good because it's fog, and it differs from a proper altered state of consciousness. Because in an altered state of consciousness, we know what's going on. In trance, we don't. And the way to know it, whether one has had an altered state of consciousness or a trance, is after it's finished. If one is dead tired and wants to go to bed, it was trance. And if one has a lot of energy and feels like one would like to continue the meditation, it was an altered state of consciousness. It's quite easy to know. But it's not unpleasant. It's rather a pleasant sort of dozing, foggy, non-verbal state where the mind isn't really awake and aware. So we don't want to practice it, if we can possibly help it. In part by part sweeping today, I had a sharp pain in my back that repeatedly distracted my attention from other areas of my body. When I came to that part of my back and put my attention where the pain had been much of the time, it disappeared, but came back as soon as I stopped attending to that spot. Can you comment on that? Yes, in the sweeping, if one hasn't practiced it very much, it's very often the case that one has gone past the spot, and then the spot that one has passed is the one that one can feel. And so one just has to make do with that and continue practicing. The mind has not become sharply focused yet, because that's a practice. And so the going through the body, one might actually already be at the chest, and all of a sudden it's throat that comes up, or here in the back one has gone past it. So if one puts the attention on the spot, it came to that part, it disappeared. Well, maybe one can get rid of this particular pain by really putting one's attention on it and staying with it. Maybe it will go away. It's possible. But very often it just so happens. One goes past and then it comes. Please discuss the terms wholesome and unwholesome relative to actions and mind objects. In a sense, these terms seem to exist outside of intentionality. Well, that would be pretty dreadful, wouldn't it? Why do they exist outside of our intentions? Is that supposed to mean possibly that we can't help being either wholesome or unwholesome? If that were the case, we would be exempt from karma making. But that's not the way it is. We're not exempt from karma making. Whether we know the intention or not, that's a second question. That's something entirely different. Most people have no clue what their intentions are. They wake up when the action is done and they see that there's something either dreadful happened or something entirely different from what they expected. Haven't examined their own intentions. Now, this only comes about that we examine our own intentions when we are mindful enough to know what we're thinking. Then we examine our intentions, our motivations. It's called clear comprehension. In Pali, sampajanya. It goes together with sati, with mindfulness. And it needs to be practiced. And the first step in clear comprehension, and I don't want to go into it any further, we are met at another time, is to find the purpose of what we're thinking, saying, and doing. It needs a bit of extra time. Impulsive thinking, saying, and doing is still with intention, but we won't know it. So to examine the purpose. And the difference between wholesome and unwholesome, well, the ones that are connected with hate and greed are unwholesome. And the ones that are connected with love and compassion and helpfulness, they are the wholesome ones. And every person has a conscience. Whether we listen to that conscience or not, we've got it. And that conscience tells us quite clearly what's wholesome and what's unwholesome. And as we examine that, we will also find that even if we imagine something is this way or that way, we can always find the ego content in it. So any of that is available to anyone who goes inside and really becomes aware. Motivation, intentions are our karma making. Without that, there wouldn't be any karma. The question is, must one become acquainted with the lists in the Abhidhamma? The answer is no. The lists in the Abhidhamma, they describe 89 states of consciousness. One does not have to know them by heart in order to know what's wholesome, what's unwholesome. And it's not concerned with moral values, because moral values are different in each society. The moral value of anything that we know to be wholesome or unwholesome is strictly connected with our lovingness and our compassion and our lack of egocentricity. The more we lack that, the more we're likely to think, speak, and act in a wholesome way. And then the last sentence is, I thought all dhammas were empty. Is that supposed to refer to wholesome and unwholesome? Well, if it is, there are two levels. One is relative truth and one is absolute truth. And as long as we've got an I, a me, we're living on the level of relative truth. And we need to look at everything from the standpoint of relative truth. And then nothing is empty. It's all got something in it. But on the level of absolute truth, it's something entirely different. But there's no use talking about it. And there's no use trying to bring the two together. They're like two levels, like the second and the third level in a house. You can't bring them together. One is here and one's there. There's no way that you can walk on this one and be on that one. A practical question on sleep and meditation. Since 2 days, my sleep never gets really deep. I'm just dozing, hear the church bells every time, and am a bit worried that I do not fall fast asleep. So far, however, I'm not exhausted. Is this a consequence of meditation, or do I need to do something about it? It is a consequence of good and strong concentration, and the only thing to do about it is not to worry about it, but to accept it as an extremely good sign. The better one can meditate, the less sleep one needs. The mind gets its only proper rest in meditation. It never gets a proper rest in sleep. It's always doing something. So if there has been strong concentration, it's a very good sign, and under no circumstances to worry about it, but to be aware of the fact that it can be very well the kind of sleep, which I can't tell from this, can be the very kind of sleep that we call mindful sleep. And if it is that, it appears to be as if one isn't sleeping, and yet when one gets up, one is totally rested. It's mindful sleep. It can be, I don't know. But in any case, not to worry about it. It's fine. I'm a greed type of person. Also, my underlying mood is usually quite joyous and positive. But whereas I can recognize greed in quite a lot of my actions, I still see my positive mood only positive. Please, can you explain in more detail the connection between a positive underlying mood and greed? A positive underlying mood does not have to be greed. It can be connected to inner joyousness, particularly if one knows how to meditate. If one can meditate and is able to arouse joy in the meditation, which would be the second jhana, second meditative absorption, one can do that also without any outer condition. But if one can examine oneself more closely, and one can see that this positive underlying mood is based sometimes, very often, on hope, on future, on something that has come through the senses or that one would like to have come through the senses, then one knows it's connected to greed. So it can be examined with sense contact or with just that feeling of being within oneself where joy actually lives. They're not so easy to find, but can be done with mindfulness, especially by someone who can meditate quite well. Can the meditation process be compared to the dying process? Well, in a way, yes. Of course, in another way, no. But in German, we have a lovely way of saying that. In German, yes and no is ja and nein, so we say jein. And then we've got the both together. In the dying process, there has to be a total letting go. One is forced to. You haven't got any choices. You've got to let go. And this letting go is quite physical. But if the mind is opposed to it, it's a bit of a battle. But if the mind's not opposed to it, but goes with that letting go, then it's peaceful. In the meditation, we have a letting go. And it also has a physical aspect to it. So it has an connection there. However, I would imagine that if someone who hasn't really come to terms with his or her own death thinks of meditation as similar to the dying process, it's going to become more difficult rather than easier, because there's fear. But one of the things, of course, we can guarantee that it's not likely is anybody going to die during the meditation, so it's all right to let go. Is it normal if one feels sick in the stomach after loving kindness contemplation? Well, I would say yes. But only for a person who has a fair bit of trouble with that one. It's something where the mind is probably getting a bit upset about all those things that it finds within. So it could be considered to be a fairly good sign. I would suggest that if that happens, to immediately go to the sweeping part by part and try to let go more of any of those unpleasant sensations. I often can concentrate much better when I close my eyes, even in walking meditation. But one can't go through life with closed eyes. Well, one doesn't usually go through life meditating, does one? Do you think it will get better the more one practices? Well, the concentration is concerned with meditation, I presume. So to close one's eyes in meditation is fine. And in walking meditation, if one is sure there isn't a tree in the way, that's fine. No problem. Just make sure that, the path is clear. And other than that, concentrating with mindfulness. Mindfulness is not exactly the same as concentration. It does have, of course, concentration in it. But mindfulness and daily living, yes, we have to keep our eyes open. And because, it just doesn't work any other way. So yes, everything gets better with practice. Whatever it may be. Whether it's this sickness in the stomach after loving kindness contemplation, or whether it's concentration, everything gets better. One just has to practice. Since ignorance is the first cause of birth and death cycle, what caused ignorance? Is ignorance always there without a cause? Well, this is one of the 4 questions that the Buddha would not answer. He didn't answer the question what influence a Buddha has, what influence a person in jhanas has, the karmic connections, and the, so to say, beginning of the universe, or the beginning of the life cycle. Wouldn't answer those. He said none of these 4 things contribute to our enlightenment. And when we are enlightened, we'll know anyway. So in the dependent origination, ignorance is called the first cause, but it isn't necessarily, and you will find it back there on that blue thing there, the Wheel of Life. It's I can't see everything that's written there, but that is the dependent origination. You will see that it's a circle, and a circle has no beginning, no end. And that's all it is, it's a circle. And we do usually, when we explain that Wheel of Life, we do start with ignorance. It's a good start. But we could start anywhere within that circle and still come to the same thing. So this is the only answer that applies to that. It's a circle. Just goes round and round and round. Is rebirth a choice or a conscious decision by the dead, or a definite result based on one's karma? Well, it's both. The conscious decision or choice is made because of the craving to be. When there is no craving to be, it's impossible to be reborn. So the craving to be only disappears for the fully enlightened one. And that fully enlightened one cannot have any craving to be because there's nobody there to crave. It's really very simple. But because there are so many books, it's getting more and more complicated. And there are also so many opinions. So as long as there is somebody there who's dying or has been living, and there is the craving to be, and that is the conscious choice that we make. We can call it an unconscious choice because most people don't even know that they're craving to be. And it's also a result based on one's karma, because as long as we're making karma, there's somebody there making karma, and as long as there's somebody there making karma, there will be somebody there to be reborn. When there's nobody there, nobody makes karma, nobody gets reborn. It's impossible. How can one get out of birth and death cycle? Yeah, well, that's a $64,000 question, of course. That's what we're concerned with. That's all we're concerned with. That's what we're trying to do here. But I mean, it doesn't work this fast, you know. And once got out, is it possible to come back to the cycle again? Now, the answer to that is just plain no. If there's nobody there, nobody can come back. To get out of birth and death cycle, that's what the whole practice is about. But one has to realize that as long as one wants to be here, For any reason whatsoever, may it be as justified as anything, or such a good and wonderful reason like becoming an excellent meditator, helping the world, making peace, whatever it may be. As long as I want to be here, so long I'm not out of that birth and death cycle. Naturally, a good reason for being here is much more preferable to all the usual reasons, but once having got out, there's nobody there to come back in, which is really a great consolation. Oh, I have to translate these. Can knowledge, which would be useful today, but is not part of the Buddhist tradition, for instance, the meaning of dreams, could we not get that from other enlightened ones? Does not every enlightened one have the same knowledge as the Buddha? Or are there different stages of enlightenment? Well, yes, there are different stages of enlightenment, but who would know which stage anybody has reached? One had to reach exactly that same stage. I said that already once, but I'll say it again. Only a Buddha knows a Buddha. We know what it's like to be angry. So somebody comes near us who's angry, we know that person is angry. We've experienced it, we know exactly what it's like. But we don't know when we're in front of a Buddha that that's a Buddha, because we haven't experienced to be enlightened. So we don't know what the different people that may be around, whether they have this grade of enlightenment or not. Certainly an enlightened person can help one, there's no doubt about it, if one has a good karma, to be taught by them. And it's not a matter of knowledge. Here the German word for knowledge is used, Wissen. It's not that at all. It's wisdom, which in German is Weisheit and not Wissen. So I'm saying that German for the person who has written it. It's not knowledge at all. Knowledge has absolutely nothing to do with it. There were people enlightened in the Buddha's day who, in fact, has a very nice story about a chap who was so dull in his mind that he couldn't remember even 3 lines of teaching. And the Buddha finally decided, well, that was useless to teach him anything. So he gave him the task of cleaning a white piece of cloth of all its spots. Keep cleaning and cleaning and cleaning, which he did. There was no difficulty for him to understand what to do. And it finally dawned on him that he was actually supposed to clean his inner being. And he eventually did become enlightened without knowing any of the teaching. So it's not knowing, it's wisdom. And one could say, yes, any enlightened one would have the same wisdom, but not necessarily, or probably not at all, the same knowledge. In the part-by-part method, it became clear to me that only sensations and emotions exist, and none of them were me. There were often disturbing thoughts which had as their content the ego-supporting stories from the past and the future. The question is, with what method can I inspect the contents of the thought in respect of me? the content of thought is not the most pertinent aspect of me. It's the belief and the feeling that this is my thought. And as long as we believe and then also, of course, feel that this is my thought, and sometimes we even believe that it's so clever nobody else could possibly have it, or the opposite. We also do that. We think the negative aspect. As long as we believe it's my thought, so long there's a me. But when we start seeing with an inner vision, which doesn't mean pictures, the inner reality, that thoughts come and go, and they never say, this is me. They come and they go. But there is this very much ingrained attitude within, which doesn't usually even question the fact that it's my thought. Particularly when we react. Not when we dream up something. It's not quite as strong then. But when we react, it's obviously me getting angry. It's obviously me wanting to do something. It's the ownership of all those things which arise. And that is a very important investigation, and could be done naturally as a contemplation, and can be very helpful. When we see it for what it is, we will see that it's nothing but movement. Constant movement, extremely tiring. One of these days, one then also knows how tiring thinking is. And one doesn't use it so much anymore, unless it's necessary. Obviously, there are times when it's necessary. We can stand up and stretch our legs.